I'm kind of the Seabiscuit of this campaign. And when I come from behind to win this race, people are going to say, no way we're going to run against this guy. Let me tell you, when I push through that agenda and establish a workers' White House, they're going to be there to say no competition in 2012. We're ready for Kucinich for 7 years, 8 years. Let's keep going. Make it happen.
Hope springs eternal for Congressman Dennis Kucinich, Democratic candidate for president. He joins us this morning from Encinitas, California. Good morning, Congressman.
Good morning, George.
Well, you're getting big cheers in the debates with those lines, but it's not translating into any meaningful support. You've raised a fraction of what you raised in the last campaign in 2004, and you're drawing less support in the polls. How do you explain that?
Well, I think what's happening is that there was so much attention paid to a number of candidates early on that as people start to see that it's my campaign, which is addressing the aspirations of the American people for peace, for health care, for jobs for all, I think that the support is building in my direction, which is why you're starting to hear those cheers, and they're very loud, and they seem to be coming from everywhere. You say you're expressing the aspirations of the American people, but the cheers really seem to be coming most from the liberal base of the party. You staked out positions: single-payer health care, immediate withdrawal from Iraq, repeal NAFTA, legalize gay marriage. The centrists in the Democratic Party, the Democratic Leadership Council, led by Harold Ford, believe that the path you're laying out could hurt the party. Here's what he wrote along with Mayor O'Malley of Baltimore in the Washington Post this week. He says that George W. Bush is handing us Democrats our Hoover moment. Independents, swing voters, and even some Republicans who haven't voted our way in more than a decade are willing to hear us out. With an ambitious common-sense agenda, the Progressive Center has a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to win back the White House, expand its margins in Congress, and build a political and governing majority that could last a generation. They believe that if the party follows your path, they're going to blow this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
Well, first of all, you have to keep in mind that the center has shifted in our politics. I'm really at the center, and all the other candidates are to the right of me. And they're to the right of the American people. The Democratic Leadership Council's agenda is indistinguishable from the Republican neoconservative agenda. You know, they want to continue to stay in Iraq. They reject the idea of a not-for-profit health care system. So I'm the one candidate who's addressing directly the concerns of the American people for peace by bringing our troops home, setting in motion a peacekeeping and security process that will enable that to happen. The money's there, and the Congress should tell the President we must do that now. Only one standing for a not-for-profit health care system. George, when you know how many people are trapped in poor health because they don't have the money or because they can't afford the premiums, co-pays, and deductibles, we have a responsibility to join every other industrialized democracy to make sure we have a not-for-profit health care system. So what's happened is these analysts are really trying to feather their own nest and are trying to keep a politics that really helps support a privileged few at the expense of the many. So I'm the candidate of the people. And as the American people understand that, not only will my numbers go up, but you watch what happens in those early caucuses and primaries.
Let's talk a little bit more about Iraq. You mentioned that you wanted to pull out now. You've been consistent on Iraq. You voted against the war from the start. But the big question for all the candidates, and Governor Chet Culver of Iowa poses it in the New York Times this morning, is what is the plan after you bring the troops home? There are a lot of prospects for massacres between Shiites and Sunnis, maybe even a genocide. What is your plan for the day after U.S. troops come home?
Well, you know, with bringing the troops home, we have to work to set in motion an international security and peacekeeping process that moves in as our troops leave. But there's a broader question.
But what would that be, though? Give me specifically, what would that be?
Well, what would it be is that the United States, as Congress notifies the President that we're not going to appropriate any more money, use the money that's there to bring the troops home, which does not require a vote, by the way, then what happens simultaneously, the President must go to the region, and since Mr. Maliki is already in touch with Iran, we must engage Syria and Iran and other nations in the region to put together this international security and peacekeeping force that would move in as our troops leave.
What incentive do they have to join that?
George?
Well, let me just say on this first, then you can get to the broader question. What incentive do they have to go along with that?
Well, first of all, the occupation is fueling the insurgency. We have to keep that in mind. That's why we must leave. And the incentive is stability in the region. I've spoken to dozens of ambassadors in the region and just near the region, and I can tell you that every country is concerned about the instability which our occupation of Iraq continues to bring. So it's clear we need a new direction. And now to the broader question. We are in Iraq because of a failed national security doctrine which says that you achieve peace through strength, through unilateralism, preemption, first strike. A Kucinich national security doctrine is strength through peace, through diplomacy, through building confidence by adhering to international treaties and international law, by pursuing what Franklin Roosevelt called the science of human relations. As President of the United States, I'm going to follow the spirit of John Kennedy when he said in his inaugural, let's not negotiate out of fear, but let us never fear to negotiate. America is ready for a president who can go and meet the world with confidence and with strength, and I say we do it strength through peace, instead of this doctrine which has taken us into Iraq based on lies, which would put us on the threshold of war against Iran. The American people don't want to go there anymore, and they're ready for a president who understands that, and frankly, George, that's one of the things that distinguishes me from the rest of the field.
Let me see how far
the American people understand that. They're ready to vote for it.
Let me follow up and see how far you take this doctrine of what you call strength through peace. Barack Obama drew some criticism a couple of weeks ago when he appeared to rule out using nuclear weapons against terrorist targets in Afghanistan and Pakistan. And last year, Senator Clinton had a similar reaction when she was asked about some stories that were coming out saying the Bush administration might be planning to use tactical nuclear weapons against Iran. Here's what she said.
No option should be off the table. But I would certainly take nuclear weapons off the table. And this administration has been very willing to talk about using nuclear weapons in a way we haven't seen since the dawn of the nuclear age. I think that's a terrible mistake.
In your view, what role do nuclear weapons play in our defense arsenal, and under what circumstances would you use them?
I think that the United States must lead the way for nuclear abolition. That's the central thesis of the Non-Proliferation Treaty. And when any candidate says all options are on the table, notwithstanding remarks that clarify it, what we're talking about is a nuclear option as well. That's not acceptable.
You know, so you would never have a nuclear option?
No, you can't. I mean, it's insane. Think about it. Jonathan Schell wrote this years ago about nuclear winter. If you drop a bomb anywhere, it affects the whole world. So we have to have a president who understands that the world is one. Here we are worried about global climate change, and people are seriously talking about using nuclear weapons. We must have an international peacekeeping process where a president leads the way in talks with nations, and we must work to get rid of nuclear weapons. Now, we have to do that with the nuclear powers. We need to rebuild our relationship with Russia, and we also need to tamp down the violence on the Asian subcontinent. For anyone to talk about attacking Pakistan with any kind of weapons just begs the question as to whether they have the fitness to be president, because that could set off a nuclear exchange between Pakistan and India.
Would you do away with the doctrine of nuclear deterrence, which rests on the threat of using nuclear weapons?
Yes, I think we have to get rid of nuclear weapons. The idea that somehow by having nuclear weapons you make the world a safer place is essentially insane. We need to have the wisdom and the knowledge to know that that nuclear sword of Damocles hangs not over our country, but the entire world. We don't need children taking duck and cover drills in the future. We need children who have the confidence to know that their leaders are smart enough to bring about a peaceful world because we talk to each other, because we understand that the dangerous weapons that are out there must be put away. And a Kucinich presidency with a doctrine of strength through peace is the direction that this country will go under my administration. We will work to abolish nuclear weapons and engage every nation which is a nuclear nation to do the same, and every non-nuclear nation not to develop.
So would you lead by example and have unilateral nuclear disarmament?
I would lead through multilateral nuclear disarmament. I mean, this is something that we'd have to do together. And I think we can't do that. But you need a president who has the understanding of the danger this represents to the entire globe, George. I mean, for people to talk loosely about the use of nuclear weapons shows zero understanding about Nagasaki, Hiroshima. It shows no understanding about even the test in strontium-90. We need someone who understands the imperative of peace, the imperative of human unity, and I'm ready to lead this country forward in a totally new direction, setting aside fear, moving America confidently into the world, and being able to address those serious economic issues here at home, which frankly are not being addressed because of the war in Iraq and because of these huge military buildups.
Let me just ask one more question on this. If you were president, what would you do if terrorists hit New York or Washington or your hometown of Cleveland with a dirty bomb?
Well, first of all, we have an obligation to protect our ports. And our ports right now are not protected. I've talked to longshore workers who tell me about the minimal number of containers that are being inspected. We have to have inspection of containers, but if, you know, the way that you start to re-engage the world is without aggression. We're not making any friends.
What would you do if they strike? That's my question. What would you do if they do strike?
Pardon?
What would you do if they do strike?
Well, if they do strike, I mean, actually, you know, that's a, you know, first of all, you have to know where it's coming from. We had an attack on 9/11, so we don't have to be hypothetical about this, George. The administration took plans off the shelf. You look at the book Bush at War by Bob Woodward, page 49, a meeting of the National Security Council, Donald Rumsfeld said, let's use this opportunity to strike at Iraq, a nation that had nothing to do with 9/11. We must have a national security doctrine that involves using good old-fashioned police work to track down people who appear to be ready to strike at this country, but at the same time, the best defense that we have in America is diplomacy, is a smart intelligence program that cannot be led astray by ideology. I mean, I was the one person, I'm the one person running for Congress, or for president, who was able to demonstrate the clarity of vision which people have a right to expect in a president by rejecting the cause of war in 2002 and by rejecting the increased budgets for the purpose of prosecuting that war. People want a president who's right the first time. And so I've already been able to demonstrate that, George. We've already had an audition for the presidency, and frankly, I'm the only one who's passed it.
You've been taking some heat back home, though, from your local newspapers. The Elyria Morning Journal said in 2004, Kucinich was the ultra-left moonbeam candidate of the Democratic presidential primaries. He was mostly good for laughs on late-night comedy shows and with his Find Me a Wife act. Now it's 2006. Kucinich has his new wife, and his warmed-over presidential candidacy isn't remotely amusing or productive. The Cleveland Plain Dealer. Greater Cleveland and the 10th Congressional District need a representative who will make them his #1 priority. By committing himself to months of trooping through Iowa and New Hampshire, Kucinich risks squandering whatever clout he might finally bring to bear for the people who have so patiently put their trust in him. Are your constituents paying a price for your presidential campaign?
My constituents are well served because we handle over 10,000 requests for service a year. I mean, this is my 40th year in politics and government service. And let me tell you this, George. The issues that I've raised in this election, and which I'll address as President of the United States, bear directly on the concerns of Cleveland, Ohio. People are concerned about NAFTA. They want a president who will cancel NAFTA and cancel our relationship with the WTO and move to trade that's based on workers' rights, human rights, and environmental quality principles. Lack of access to health care and affordability of health care is a major issue in the Cleveland area. Cleveland and the United States is waiting for a president who recognizes that a not-for-profit health care system, which I'm the co-author of in H.R. 676, is the only solution, practical solution that exists for the health care needs. People want a president who's sensitive to the need to repair the infrastructure and create jobs. It is my plan, which I co-authored with a Republican, Steve LaTourette of Ohio, which will create a new WPA-type program, rebuild America's bridges, water systems, sewer systems, and create millions of jobs. I mean, it's the experience that I've had from Cleveland that enables me to be president because, let me tell you, the needs of Cleveland, Ohio are widespread, and they're synonymous with the needs of the people of the United States.
Congressman, thank you very much for your time this morning.